So multiple mini interviews can feel really frightening because you're walking into a scenario-based interview, and so you're not going to have things rote learn. But I can assure you that there are lots of ways in, there are lots of ways of doing things. I promise this is going to be absolutely fine. And actually, I think multiple mini interviews are really fun once you get up to speed with what they're asking you to do. So multiple mini interviews came from the USA. There was a particular medical school that was finding the applicants coming through weren't they were really great academically, but A, they had a high dropout rate, and B, they were finding the complex ethical situations that doctors come across, and sort of what the medical world would call bedside manner wasn't amazing. So what they wanted to do is have a way of testing people on their ability to navigate in this really hard human world that they were going to find themselves in. And so what a multiple mini interview looks like is you go in. If it's in person, you might be all in a really big room with different tables and different admissions tutors, different people interviewing you, and you'll be given a scenario question to read quite often, or perhaps a topic on some occasions, but usually a scenario question. And you'll be given around 3 minutes to think through the scenario question, and then you usually have between 3 and 5 minutes to hold the floor and give your response. And obviously this is a bit of a weird thing to do because you won't be used to talking on your own for 3 to 5 minutes, and also the admissions tutors tend to have been briefed. If it's like a real MMI setup based on this particular kind of interviewing, like formally, then they'll have been briefed not to be nasty or anything, but not to give you any physical or verbal feedback as they go, because otherwise what you get is some students who are doing really well and getting loads of like, yeah, you're doing really well, awesome, from the admission staff, and otherwise if it takes you a little bit of time to get going with a question, maybe the reaction isn't very fair and it will put you off. So it's supposed to be very like equal opportunities is an MMI. The other advantage is, as you go to different examiners, you go to different interviewers, if they have any personal bias towards you for any reason, that's supposed to be erased by the fact that you see so many people. That's one of the aims of it. Yeah, we can have a conversation about whether that's true or not, I don't know, but that was one of the advantages. And then these days it's quite frequent for these multiple mini interviews to be on Zoom or Teams or another video chat because of COVID. So how would I go about, if you're given an interview question that has absolutely nothing to do with midwifery, it might feel like you've got no chance in putting your skills across as a potential midwife, but I'd argue there are actually so many ways you can look into midwifery type topics. And I use a particular pro forma when I'm addressing this type of question, or in fact for many other situations like last minute essays and things. I use this 4-part pro forma to talk through different subject areas. So to begin with, whatever question you've been given, give them a common sense response. If it's about a human being and your reaction to them, are you looking at their body language? Do you know this person already? Are you using similar language to them? Are you sure your communication's good? Are you picking up on what they're feeling? All of that kind of stuff. And then you've got, if the question has absolutely nothing to do with midwifery, it's still worth just thinking, if I was a midwife in this situation, would I have extra responsibilities? So if it's something to do with a child who's in trouble or some vulnerable party, do you have, you don't have to say, oh, this is a midwifery interview and therefore I'm going to answer as if I was a midwife. Like, that might be a bit strained. Don't shoehorn anything in. But you could say, as a healthcare professional or a prospective healthcare professional, I guess I would have these particular responsibilities around this thing. I would want to call this agency. That counts for a lot, actually. If you can think of good places to get advice, good reliable places to get advice, that's always a good thing to do. And then the third point is, I think about wider social and ethical implications. So if you've got a group of people who are, I don't know, disadvantaged in some ways, I always think about this part of the question as, if this was on horizon or panorama, what are the kind of points that would be examined? And so if you can weave that into your answer, it gives them an idea of your complex ethical decision making, and sort of it's almost like a philosophical aspect of the question. So that can be really fun and really engaging to do. So if you've got, like, I don't know, our example of a child in trouble, Is their parent from a group of people, like being a single parent who actually hasn't got a lot of resources, and how are we treating that person? Are we able to even the playing field for them at all? Those kind of things. And then who's most vulnerable? So I would always come back to, is there somebody in this scenario who's going to get hurt? Can I prevent that? What have I done to safety net? And that's the way I move through these kind of questions. So I hope this helps. Other bits of advice, just be aware that you don't have to fill all the time. It's probably a good idea if you can, if you have things to say, but a lot of people get stuck with like, oh, I've answered the question with my first attempt and I don't want to add anything else in case what I've said comes across as like not confident, or maybe they just feel like, oh god, I've said a thing, I can't think of anything else to say. And that's all fine, but just give yourself a few seconds, give yourself the ability to sit in the tension of that moment. And almost always when I've done like one-to-one prep sessions, people's answers, I'm going to say always, people's answers as they continue to think about the question become more interesting and more nuanced. And even when you're writing an essay, right, like the first things you'll say are common sense stuff, and then as you go through and you start to consider things from many different angles, many different people's points of view, you get more and more interesting points to make. And very, very similar with multiple mini interviews. And yeah, good luck with your interview. As I say, it can be a really fun day and great for demonstrating your midwifery skills.